Hello, hi, Heather Prekop here today, Senior Director, Global CPG here at Euromonitor. And I'm here today with our pet care team, here to speak about what we saw at CAGNY last year from the pet players, talk a little bit more about trends, not only across the US, but globally, and then speak a bit about future outlook for the industry. So today here with me is Sahiba from our Singapore office, Liseth from our London office, and Melanie from our Chicago office. So very much spanning the globe today. And I think what we will do is speak to three key trends that we saw: humanization, health and wellness, and different plays across channels, and then speak to outlook. So starting with humanization, what we wanted to touch on was at CAGNY, we did see some great examples. Humanization was touched on across different players, but specifically, we did see that there was the play by J.M. Smucker with the Milk-Bone Peanut Buttery Bites made with real Jif peanut butter. This was the first dog treat to feature a human food brand in the US, and it's seen some success. So with that, I think I wanted to turn it over to the team on that humanization trend. What else are we seeing across the pet industry?
Right. I think the one thing about humanization and pet care is that it's more like an underlying driver that's been around for a lot of years, and that is the one that's propelling a lot of the innovation that we are seeing today in the pet care space. Like you mentioned, the Jif peanut butter crossover is one example. In the pet healthcare space in South Korea, we saw that a local human healthcare company introduced a pet variant of their human supplement. So just to make it a lot more relatable, the packaging was done in a way that's very similar to how the pet supplement or the human supplement, sorry, is packed. So I think those kind of plays are pretty interesting to see how crossovers are coming in. And in some way, we're also seeing crossovers coming in for the indulgence aspect. So a few months back, Crocs released their line of Crocs for dogs. So basically, they are Crocs exactly like the human would wear it, but in a very small variant for 4 paws, and you can totally like match with your pet. So I think it's a very interesting play, and it really depends on how the player chooses to implement it.
Great, thanks. Lisa, Melanie?
Yes. Yes, I want to add that in line with the humanization trends, we have seen also an increase in consumption occasions. For example, now in the UK, we see that pet parents take their pets with them on holidays. And we see that Hilton, for example, has a Christmas menu that includes the same ingredients that the roast dinner traditionally has here in the UK. So we see that these occasions are more common during the year. And for example, now pet parents in birthdays, in Halloween, with Christmas, with the snacks as advent calendars, use all these opportunities to pamper their pets. So this shows a lot of potential in the industry, and we see this across the globe too.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, and I think from my aspect, the interesting bit with humanization that I've seen is just that difference between am I humanizing my pet as I would maybe myself, my own standards of health or my own standards of, products that I want to use, or am I humanizing my pet in maybe more of an infantilized way? Right. So you have these more even treat formats, right? So you have a lot of squeezy pouches being released mimicking what you would see in a child's treat, right? And those squeezy or treats have been used a lot in cats, but for dogs, they're being used as an enrichment format where you can actually feed it to your dog or have them play with the squeezy pouch, right? So that's more so playing on the needs of the pet owner as opposed to the actual needs of the pet. So a bit of a different interpretation there on humanization and how brands are reaching out to the consumer in that way.
Great, thanks. And puppies and kittens, to your point, Melanie, were definitely an area of focus for a lot of the companies last week within pet. Great. So I think that shifting then over into the health and wellness trend. So this is one where therapeutic supplements, specifically multivitamins, were a big focus. I mean, we saw this definitely as a double down area from Nestle in the last day of CAGNY. But any additional builds on what you're seeing from maybe other companies or across the globe in this space? Sahiba?
Yeah, so I think the healthcare space, particularly in the pet healthcare and wellness, is a pretty up and coming space. We are seeing a lot of development, a lot of product development happening with a very health specific focus. So on the one hand, definitely Nestle spoke a lot about enhancing their therapeutic portfolio and also looking at pet supplements. I believe in 2023, Mars, through its Pedigree brand, had launched a range of pet supplements. In Asia Pacific, also, what we have been noticing that even like a lot of local players or regional players, they are coming out with products and packaging that have a very science first appeal to it. Now, they are still in the non therapeutic space, but they will carry the kind of health claims that you would typically find in a very sophisticated health specific offering. They have claims around that the product is vet approved, so it is a play in a way on how you want to position the product, but still it is very much related to putting the food or the offering as a health first offering. And that really, in a way, adds value that, okay, if you're paying a premium price, this is what you can expect to get from it. So, yeah, I think it's a very important play for any pet food or pet healthcare player as in today's date.
Great, thank you. Liseth?
Yes, we see a lot of potential in pet dietary supplements, particularly. And as we know, for example, there are specific supplements for puppies where they require more protein, or for senior dogs to tackle mobility issues. But we also have seen that all the key players have launched pet dietary supplements based on managing stress and anxiety for dogs and cats. So this is a segment that has a lot of potential for future growth, particularly after the pandemic, with pet parents coming back to the offices. Pet parents, some of the pets have struggled with separation anxiety. So this is a segment that many companies have focused on.
Thank you. Melanie?
Yeah, and then from my end, the health wellness, particularly looking at the supplement space, it's been interesting to see how formats are developing. So supplements had recently, they've been moving into like the little tablets, the powders, more recently into like the soft chews, but still being called supplements, right? And what I've seen is more and more focus on trying to blur that line between the supplement and the treat. So for example, Native Pet has like air dried chews, right? They're not outwardly calling them supplement outside of maybe like a small call out in the product details, right? And so that kind of idea of, oh, you're not feeding your pet anything that's like medicine-y, it's enticing, it'll be fun, it'll be interesting. Particularly maybe even to justify that pricing, right? On the one end. And on the other end, it's easier to integrate into the pet's food. Right, that goes back to that whole focus we've seen on full balanced meals and adding in ingredients that go well together and products that can be mixed well with others.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I think formats, different channels, need states. I know Fresh Pet did have a launch in the gut health space. I think, again, speaking a bit to the humanization trend, and Nestle with therapeutic line leaning into the vet as a channel for that, which I think comes to our third trend here is different plays on channel. And so at CAGNY, Fresh Pet was very clear that they had a branded fridge in the grocery space as a way to grow their line and differentiate themselves. And as I said, Nestle with the therapeutic lines doubling down in the vet space. So anything that you can speak to on, I guess, the play specifically online to offline, offline to online, what that trend looks like for pet. Sahiba?
Yeah, so I think it's quite interesting where we are at today with regards to channels. So I remember during COVID, it was everything when I shut down, everything was moving to e-commerce, and the entire narrative around distribution was that, oh, you have to go from offline to online. We also saw a lot of like D2C brands coming up at that time through subscription-based models or other channels. But effectively, at the end of the day, just to expand beyond where they're at and to get access to a wider consumer base, even these online brands have to come into the offline space. Your online discovery is one part of the process, but the way that people can discover a product sitting on the shelf is also a very key part of how you want to make your product available. So, a good example is actually in the US itself, where there's Ollie, which is a fresh pet subscription-based D2C brand. It used to be D2C, but then I believe somewhere in the middle of last year, or the year before that, they basically got into a collaboration with Petco, and their products started retailing through both Petco offline and online. So I think this entire convergence of starting at one place and then expanding as much as you can is pretty important for a distribution setup, because fundamentally it's about reaching your consumer where they're at. So yeah, I think that plays pretty
Absolutely.
important.
Great, thank you. Liseth?
Yes, so I think e-commerce has become very important, particularly because allow consumers to compare prices online. So for example, we have seen in Italy, Arcaplanet, one of the main retailers. So as they see what are the consumers interested, they have increased the number of SKUs in the mid-price segment. So this channel has gained a lot of presence, particularly when inflation has increased and consumers look for saving options.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
Melanie?
then for me, I think it was really interesting what Sahiba mentioned about meeting the consumer where they are. So with channels, right, it is important to build out that brand, particularly when you're looking at these major brands struggling to retain consumer trust. There's a lot of just uncertainty on quality, ingredients, formulation, all of that. And so for online, it's a really easy way for brands to build that connection. You have TikTok, right? Brands are able to go globally and connect verbally with their consumer, right? Get on a name-to-name basis with the consumer, answer the questions live, right? So that kind of format really helps build out their brand so that once they make it on the shelves, they already have that established fan base. The other aspect is just diversifying the channels you're in, right? So we're seeing a lot of brands focus on those more local specialty boutiques as opposed to the big ones. Again, reaching into that consumer trust, that neighborhood feel. And then even into the home and garden, right? That's been a huge area of retail we've seen start to grow, right? In the US, we have Tractor Supply reaching out with a lot of acquisitions into the pet space, bringing in a lot of these more premium brands into a retailer that maybe perhaps a couple years ago would have been seen more as a format for older generations or like working farm families, that kind of thing, right? So diversifying the consumer and diversifying how you're reaching the consumer.
Great. Yeah, and to your point,
Actually,
sorry, go ahead,
sorry,
Sahiba.
I actually want to just add something to that. So we're talking about diversifying and meeting consumers where they're at. So right now, I know we're talking more specific to the retail space, but Lisa mentioned a point earlier about how the pets, the people are going outdoors with their pets. They are checking into hotels. They have staycations and all. I think it's worth considering channels beyond the typical retail channels and start looking at where are people going with their pets. Similar to what was observed in London, even in Singapore, there was a hotel that tied up with a local pet food brand. They offered a staycation, for a petcation, a pet staycation, and as a part of the welcome pack, this brand's treats were a part of the welcome pack, and I think they could order the food off the menu. So I think these are innovative ways in which brands can really look at playing in the more extensive areas that people are taking their pets into. And of course, it does bring in an element of premiumization as well. So yeah, I think it's taking the, elevating your positioning and elevating your availability. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I mean, again, kind of parallel to the human food space where there's a lot of um, creativity investment in the vending space on the go, meeting the consumers where they're at, as well as looking into restaurants as a way to kind of get in terms of branded and new flavors and new innovations. So that makes sense for the pet as well. I think here, just to wrap it up, last discussion would be on future outlook and what are companies doing to drive growth. I know we saw a lot on acquisitions in this space from CAGNY, specifically General Mills looking to the acquisitions were focused on pet brands as opposed to divestitures in other areas. And then also Nestle really bucketing out three buckets, and in their kind of must winning space was definitely the pet segment. So pet, a strong growth potential seen by many, but would love to hear from you as well.
Yeah, I think acquisitions has been a great play that we've been seeing of late. Typically, like post-COVID, there has been a lot of movement in the M&A space. Speaking about General Mills, I actually have been observing the acquisitions they've been making since Blue Buffalo. And if I look at the entire portfolio that they've built, it has a very specific focus on a premium positioning, a very specific kind of delivery in terms of what benefits they're providing. So it could be a taste oriented positioning or it could be a protein oriented positioning. So I think just through the means of the acquisition, they are expanding their portfolio in a very strategic way and they are building a place for themselves in the premium places where they're looking to play. So I think as on today's date, acquisitions are a great tool that I would say are a great resource that these companies are using to go beyond where they're currently at.
Great, thanks. And I think that premium play is different from the value affordability theme that we heard from a lot of other companies last week.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks, Liseth.
Yes, so we have seen small players in specific countries that sometimes like they are becoming competition for the big players. So I think it's very clever the move from General Mills acquiring Edgar and Cooper in Belgium, because in this way they can tap in this kind of local ingredients element, or when pet parents want to support the local economy, and they have a lot of potential for growth. And I think another aspect that supports merger and acquisitions now is that interest rates are declining across key markets. So then this makes financier more convenient too.
And I think
Thank
the
you.
last part for me is just acquisitions being used to reach a consumer, right, and address that aspect of trust. So you have a lot of brands have this established branding, or they're very science forward, very personable. But then that means they'll have that gap of consumer that they won't be able to reach with their own brand. And so you see it with General Mills, right? You saw it with Hills acquiring, entering Fresh in Australia, right? They're trying to enter these new consumers that are more in the fresh space that have moved on past the kibble, past the dry formats, even with the air dry, whatever, right? They're not appealed by that. So I think that's an interesting aspect, right? You buy the brand and then you kind of step back, right? You're helping scale, right? And you're adding to your portfolio, but you're still just taking a step back and letting the existing brand do the work rather than having to build from the bottom up. So really, I think interesting long-term play there for growth, and to just generally, again, diversify that consumer.
Great, thanks. So I think we'll wrap there. I think overall, very strong positive signs for growth within the pet industry. A lot of acquisitions happening in favor of pet, a lot of premium plays as a way to grow growth top line. And so thanks again, Liseth, Melanie, Sahiba, for your time. And for those, tune in to either our blog post or for subscribers, our Passport portal for more insights on pet moving forward this year. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.